Hello and welcome to The View from 4 feet and 3 inches. I'm your host, Cassidy Huff, and I am a white woman. Today I have a white background because, as you know, this is my virtual recording session background. I have black glasses on. My hair is tied back. I have blue butterfly earrings and a blue and white patterned shirt. And today, you guys know I have amazing guests on. I have one of my dear parasocial friends on from social media on today, Jenna Bainbridge. Hi, Jenna.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Cassidy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Do you want to do a quick intro, like a visual description of yourself real quick?
So, Jenna Bainbridge, she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with dark hair. I am a wheelchair user, though you can't see my wheelchair currently. And I am in my living room. So there's lots of plants around me, and it's my happy place.
I love it. I truly love it. Okay, I know this is like an existential question, but I always start off with this. Who are you? What do you do? What are you all about? For those who don't know who you are.
Yes, I am an actor. I am a disability rights advocate. And the things I am most passionate about are making the arts accessible and equitable and inclusive, especially for people with disabilities.
Okay, I feel like you glossed over like a really big part of yourself. You're currently on Broadway.
Yes, I am currently on Broadway.
That's small
tiny.
You know?
No, it's like it's
Small
kind of
things.
surreal, and it's one of
Right.
those weird things that, like, it was my goal for most of my life was to get to Broadway.
Yeah.
And
And
now I'm
there.
here, and it's what's so strange about it is that, like, it is so all-consuming, which, like, I think we all
Mhm.
kinda know as actors, like, 8 shows a
Right.
week is no joke, and, the bigger of a production you are in, the more of your life it consumes, and that continues to be true on
Yes.
Broadway, but it also means that the days where I'm away from it, like, I fully kinda disengage. So,
Right.
I don't have a show for another 5 hours? So I'm like, "Great, I'm not at the
Wow.
theater. I have my life today."
Yeah, you're like not
Yeah, but I
Wow.
I
That's
am
really
yeah,
interesting.
I'm currently on Broadway. I am in Suffs, and it is incredible. We won 2 Tony Awards this year in 2024.
That's so exciting.
And thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. And I'm just honored to be there. It's an incredible show, and it is the first time ever in Broadway's history that a new musical has featured an actor who uses a wheelchair.
Yes,
So
ma'am. We love
I'm
it.
thrilled to be there. I'm thrilled to be making history and just humbled by all of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, but I got my BFA in musical theater.
Hey, I did.
I went to AMDA. You're like,
Like, I
yeah,
have
I did
stalked
know
you.
that.
But, like, in a friendly
So
way, in a
it's
nice way.
no, I know because I've done the same thing to you. So, um, we started following each other, like actually following each other, like a few
Yeah.
months ago, and it was because I knew of you, but I was at the Rolettes experience, and you came up in like so many conversations that I was having, and I was like, okay, like it's not a coincidence at this point. Like I just need to follow her because so many people are talking about her, and like then I followed you, and we have like 80
Yeah.
mutual friends.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, but I got my bachelor's of fine arts in musical theater and went to AMDA.
Ah.
Ooh,
I have a lot of friends who went to AMDA, and they're doing great. So we all
they're
come
doing
from all
good.
kinds of paths. There is no
It's true.
one way to
It's true.
get to the career you want.
Yeah, and so my goal forever was
Mhm.
Broadway. Like that was where I saw myself. That was my goal, and it was really discouraging because I didn't see myself. I'm just preaching to the choir right now, but I didn't see myself
Mhm.
represented on stage or in any mass media as a disabled person. And so when Ali Stroker won the
Mhm.
Tony, I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I can do that. And I was, what was that, 2016? So I was yeah, I was like a junior
Mhm.
in high
Mhm.
school. And so I'm curious, what brought you to the stage? How did you get to where you are?
It's a good question.
That's a big
Yeah.
question, I know.
It's it's funny that you bring up the Rolettes because, like,
Mm.
I first encountered the Rolettes, strangely, at Disneyland. And I happened to just
Oh,
see and, like, I didn't know they were the Rolettes at the time. I just saw this, like,
yeah,
band of beautiful women in wheelchairs, and
terrain.
I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god, this is the greatest thing."
Who are
Exactly, and I just, like,
they?
struck up a conversation with them in line, for one of the
Yeah.
rides, I've been following them ever since, which is funny, but,
Right.
so one of the things I think the Rolettes has done for a lot of people is something that happened to me when I was about 12 years old, which is, representation. The Rolettes shows people that, you know, you can use a wheelchair and still be a fierce dancer, right? And have an incredible
Right.
community of disabled people around you.
Right.
And for me, that experience was at Family Theater Company. And
Mm.
Family, for those who don't know, is a theater company in Denver, Colorado, where I grew up, that hires entirely actors with disabilities and the whole range and
Right.
spectrum of disabilities. So it created a really beautiful community for me,
Mm.
and a community that was, you learned both the craft of, acting and performance, and all of the hoity-toity, like, artistic side of it, but
Yeah.
also you learned how to advocate for yourself and for others, how to accommodate
Mm.
for yourself,
Right.
how to voice those needs, in a way that,
Mm.
meant that you were able to get the accommodation you needed, um, and
Yeah.
stand up for other people too, right? Stand up being a metaphor, but, you were
Yeah.
able to be there for others in a way, that was just so natural. It was just, learning
Mm.
how to work as a group to achieve access. Um, and working at Family, I started performing there when I was 12 and, continued, my last show at Family was, oh gosh, it was 2019 probably. So not that long ago.
It's not
Yeah,
that
not
long
that long
ago.
ago. And honestly, like,
No.
I still am involved in Family. I would still be doing shows there if I still lived in Colorado, but,
Right.
I recently I recorded their curtain speech for their performance of a chorus line this year. Like, I'm still
Oh, I love
yeah, Family
that.
is my first home. It's, the place where I realized that I could do this for real. I could be an
Yeah.
actor. It's also the place where, like, I met my husband. Like, it's an incredible,
Oh,
incredible place, and I think that every person in the world needs community and needs a place where they
agreed.
belong and needs a place where they feel like they don't have to hide any part of themselves. They can ask for what they need. And I think for people with
Mhm.
disabilities, it's really important to find a community of other disabled people, and
Mhm.
especially other disabled people that have a similar passion to you. And so,
Right.
I think the Rolettes gives that for so many people. Family gives that for so
Yeah.
many people. And I'm always excited to hear about more places like that, more companies like that. And they're
Yeah,
all over the world, but I think it's so important to
they
find
are.
that community because, learning how to advocate for yourself, but also just, like, learning what you might want. You have to
Mm,
have other disabled people around you to learn that. Like, even if it's just
mm.
little things like, what angle do I want my wheels at? Like, when I
Yeah,
go to a fitting with a doctor, I'm talking to a non-disabled person who doesn't have personal experience using a wheelchair. And I might ask a question
it's
like,
true.
"Hi, yeah, I want to, dance and play sports. What do I need?" And they kind of go like, "Oh, well, some people like this or this, but if you don't talk to somebody who has actually, like, played
Yeah.
sports in their wheelchair, you're not really
Yes.
able to figure out, like, well, do I, want a 2-degree tilt, or do I want, like, carbon
Right.
fiber wheels, or do I want, like, there's
Yeah.
so many things that just for, like, the basics of what is my assisted device gonna be like. But then the bigger
Right.
questions of, like, I never knew that I could play tennis. in my wheelchair until I met
Yeah.
another wheelchair user who played tennis, right? Like, it kind of opens up the
Yeah.
possibilities of like how to just exist in the world and to get the access you need and deserve, but also like the fun things and the community and finding other people who relate to like how annoying it is when the police barricade off the curb cut during parades, right?
Oh my
Like
God.
it's the
Please.
worst.
I could talk forever about non-disabled people just not thinking about things just
Yeah,
like that.
they just never
You know,
crosses their
of
mind.
being like, hey, wait, I need
Yeah,
that. What are you
yeah.
doing? I did a Q&A post on my story yesterday because I'm filming a YouTube video this week that's all about like answering questions about
Hmm.
dwarfism because it's
Hmm.
Dwarfism Awareness Month, and I have dwarfism, so
So
and so
timely.
I was like, so timely, and so I didn't want people to think that like I'm just talking about a disability that I don't have, but yeah, I did this Q&A thing, and one of the questions was really good, and it was like, what are some things infrastructure wise that you wish were more catered to your specific disability or like people with dwarfism? And it's things like that where it's like not, I don't know, because it's like it's not infrastructure, like it's not
Hmm.
permanent, but at the same time it's just things to be aware
Yeah,
of that disabled people or non-disabled people shouldn't
yeah,
do, you know. Like I have at Disneyland specifically, actually, there are this just happened to me recently. There are taller sinks and then there are shorter
yes,
sinks, and I use the shorter
yes.
one, obviously. And all these like tall people are like bent over the shorter one. Go
Go use the
use
tall
the one.
one.
Go use the tall one. You like, what are you
Yeah,
doing? It's things like that where it's like my thing isn't infrastructure because I don't want things to be inaccessible for other people,
hmm,
right? I don't want to discriminate against other people or average people, but I would like just non-disabled people to be
yeah.
more aware of certain things, and like maybe don't block off curb cuts for parades.
Right, right. Yeah, like
Slight things.
maybe don't put the, extra outdoor dining like on the ramp, right? Or like on the side,
Yeah.
like blocking the whole sidewalk, right? Like,
Maybe don't put a dumpster in the disabled spot,
yeah, yeah.
Like
Well, and
just
even just,
small
little
things.
things like the table that is marked as wheelchair accessible, like if you don't need that table, don't use it.
Why are you
Right?
sitting
Yeah,
there?
like it's also
Don't sit there.
so I also run a consulting company called Consultability,
Mm,
and we work
love
with
that.
theater companies primarily to like
Mm,
help them become more aware of exactly what we're talking about, right? It's like here's
right.
we do like anti-ableism trainings, but we also will like walk through spaces with them and be like, here are
Mm,
the things that you can do for free or for very, very cheap that will make your space more accessible for everybody,
mhm,
right? For your artists,
mhm,
for your employees, for your visitors. And
right.
sometimes we also give them big things like, hi, when you do a renovation, you need to put an ADA compliant bathroom, right? Like those big
Yeah,
things.
small things.
But there's also
Yeah,
little things like, you know,
right.
hey, move this trash can and also
Easy.
replace this trash can with one that isn't a foot pedal trash can, right? Like
Yeah.
things that, the free solution is.
I encountered that in my doctor's office the other
I
day. And I was like, are you
cannot
kidding?
count. It is my favorite
Why?
thing. My favorite thing, I mean, biggest pet peeve, but it is the thing I see the
Yeah.
most is going into like the ADA bathroom and the only trash can is a foot pedal. It's just so,
So many
I
things.
think people just don't even think about it. Like, yay, we put a trash can in the bathroom. And you're like, "Oh, but can I
Yeah.
use the trash can?"
No, wait.
Like,
But can I
and
use
half
it
the time
though?
it also like blocks the swing of the door. Right, where it's
Yeah.
like, you can only open the door like halfway because the trash
Yeah.
can's like behind the door. There's so many things like that where I'm just like, okay, just think
What are you
about
doing?
this for a moment. Enter this space
Just
and,
sometimes I want to put him in like a horrible like hospital
yeah,
wheelchair and make him go in
yeah,
there just for like 5 minutes and be like, "Can you easily maneuver? Okay,
then
then
you
you
need
need
to
to
fix
change some
this. Yeah,
things."
and it's so funny because
That
like, it's
sucks.
it's it's equally, like, the amount of people who come up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, wow, you're working so hard." I broke my ankle once, so I totally understand because I used a wheelchair.
I literally just had a whole podcast episode about this that wasn't even on my podcast, but it was a non-disabled person that had me on her podcast, and she was like, it was about Halloween
Uh-huh.
costumes, and because we're filming this in October, and it was about Halloween costumes and how a lot of non-disabled people will dress up
Yes.
as disabled
Yes.
people, and so we were talking about that whole issue, right? Whether it's kids, whether it's adults, it's kind of an iffy
Mhm.
thing. And so we were talking about that whole thing, and I was like, yeah, it's like they're putting they're putting a part of my identity on as a
Mhm.
costume. And that's the problem that I have. And so we were having this whole conversation, and I was like, yeah, I get a lot of people that come up to me and they're like, I broke my leg once.
I
So I
totally get
know
it.
what it's like.
But it's
I was in a chair for 2 months and I get it. I'm like, oh
oh
no,
no,
2
2 months.
months,
But also there's
8
part of me where I'm like,
weeks.
it's so frustrating because I'm like, "No, you don't get what it's like to be
No, you
disabled."
don't
You also
understand.
certainly
Every
don't
day.
understand what it's like culturally because you had a temporary disability, you are
No.
not being treated as disabled. You are not understanding that
Mm-mm.
cultural difference and that
Like,
bias.
everybody can see the cast on your leg,
Right.
therefore, they're gonna treat you
Right. So,
differently.
like, there's that side of it, but also part of me is like, you know, I'm gonna take the positive for a moment. Yes, you broke
Sure.
your leg, so you understand that the world isn't accessible. So maybe we should make it accessible. Like,
Maybe just an
like
idea.
everybody will encounter disability during their life, whether it's temporary.
Mhm. Or become
Exactly. And
disabled in
exactly.
your
That's if you're
lifetime.
lucky, you become disabled because the other solution is you die before that
If
happens.
you're lucky.
So like shouldn't we and we have all these euphemisms now for like making things accessible. Like there's a new one in for home building. They call it like aging in
Hmm.
place.
Oh,
And it's
oh,
like
okay.
euphemism for like you can
Sure.
become disabled and still live in your home. And I'm like, that should just be every
What if
building.
you are
Right, but
disabled,
every
though?
building should just be like
Yeah.
accessible so that if you are
Yes.
disabled, you can live there without making,
Agreed.
major accommodations. And if you become disabled,
Yeah.
you can continue to live there. Like that should be every building.
Yeah. Agreed. So, how are you finding the, accessibility in New York
Oh,
City?
New York. New York.
I have a love-hate relationship with New York
Yes.
City. I love it. I love it so, so, so,
Mhm.
so much. I can't explain the feeling. I've never lived on the East Coast. I've lived on the West Coast my entire
Mhm.
life. But every time I go to New York City, I feel like I'm
It's
home. I don't know another
yeah.
way to, like, describe it, but then I go outside and then I'm like,
Mhm. Mhm.
this city was not built for me."
I always say that New York is openly hostile towards people with disabilities. And
That's a good way of putting it.
but like with that being said, there there
Right.
is something like kind of helpful about just knowing it's going to suck, right? Cuz you like brace
Mhm.
yourself for it. So like
It's
and then
true.
you're pleasantly surprised if it doesn't suck.
And you're like, "Oh, it's
Right?
not that
Whereas,
bad."
like, I feel like I grew up in Denver, and Denver is super accessible for the most part.
Yeah.
It's but it meant that when you did face inaccessibility, it was like a jump scare, and you, like
Mm.
you weren't prepped for it,
I'm like,
right?
"What's
Like, if you
that?"
like,
My
New York,
God.
you're, like, always walking through brace, like, looking over your shoulder, and you're, like, ready for it. And Denver, you'd get,
Yeah.
like, lulled into this full sense of security. You'd be like, "Oh, this has been so great. Look at me. I got everywhere I needed to
Mm.
go today." And then, like, you know,
Mm.
suddenly the
Interesting.
train isn't working and there are no accessible options.
The one accessible subway
Right.
stop. And you're like,
Right. And so New York is definitely where it's
great.
like,
Elevator's broken.
okay, yeah, you just know only 30% of the, subway stations have an elevator. And of those elevators, probably
Right.
half are working at any given time. Um, and it's
Yeah.
I never thought I would live in New York because of that. I was
Mm.
always,
Yeah.
it just doesn't feel like the right fit for me. Like, if I'm not gonna be able to easily
Mm.
get to and from where I'm going, why would I live there? And, I grew up in
Yeah.
Denver where I could just drive to where I was going, park in the accessible spot, walk into
That
a
is not the
flat,
case in New York
building that's
City.
on the first floor built after, the
Yeah.
passing of the ADA. Like, I had kinda gotten used to all of that. Um,
Right.
but I've learned to really love New York, and learned how to
Mm,
make it work for me. But I do always have
mm,
to be braced for, you know, even though day to day
ableism.
exactly. And, like, day to
Yeah.
day, I know how I'm gonna get to work, how I'm gonna get home,
Right.
all of that, but then there's just gonna be that random day where there's a parade, and there are barricades blocking all the curb cuts, and there's gonna be that random day where,
Mm,
like, they're, repaving the street that I park on, and there are
mm,
no other nearby accessible parking
right.
garages, right? Like, that happens.
Right.
And you kinda have to s but because I'm always braced for it to suck, like, I'm always thinking of backup plans, um,
Mm.
which, I don't know, it's not a great way to live, but, like, at least I always do have the backup plan in the back of my mind.
And I feel like that's a very disabled
It is,
experience.
nobody else does
Like,
that.
all of us have backup
Yeah,
plans.
everyone else just goes like, "Oh, that didn't work, I'll pivot." And we're like, "Oh my god, how do I
Yeah.
pivot?" Like, I don't have the
Yeah.
balance to
Yeah,
pivot.
I wait a second. I literally cannot pivot. Um, I mean, all of us have, whether it's physically or, like, I have that in my routine,
Mhm,
right? Where, like, last week, I had an appointment that, like, knocked me down
mhm.
for, like, a day and a half. I was out. I was in chronic pain the whole time. I had 2 vaccines, 1 in
Ugh,
each arm, and I'm the person who, like, has adverse reactions to every vaccine I've ever had. It doesn't mean I'll stop getting
mhm,
them. It
mhm.
means
But
that
you know
it's just I know
yeah.
what to expect when I get them. And so I was prepping for that a
Oh my
week
god.
in advance so that all because I knew I was gonna get 2 vaccines, so all of my work I could do from the couch.
Jeez.
So, but it's that kinda
Mhm,
thing, right? So it's, like, not necessarily pivoting physically where it's like, "Oh, that street's blocked,
mhm,
gotta go the
mhm.
other way," gotta go the long way. Sometimes it's literally like, "Okay, I know I have this appointment a week in advance. How can I schedule my work around
Yeah.
this so that I can still get stuff
Uh-huh.
done and that, like, my needs are being met and like, I have, a dog and a cat, their needs are being
Mhm.
met, um, but also, like, I'm getting work done while also taking care of my
Right, yeah,
disabled
you're like, "I have
body."
to mentally prepare for physically preparing," which is a
Right.
different I the other day, I couldn't park in my normal parking garage, and,
Mm,
um, so I have my pivot, "Yay, I'm gonna go to this other parking
right,
garage that I've used before,"
right.
and, I've only used it, like, twice, right? It's my backup, I rarely have
Yeah.
to use it, and so it's
It's
my
my
backup.
backup. It's plan
Exactly,
B.
and so I go to this other parking garage, which, is, like, 1 block away, and after the show I, like, left my theater, which is on 45th Street, and,
Mm,
I was heading to the parking garage, and, the parking garage is on, like, the south side of the street, and so I,
mhm,
have to plan ahead because of curb cuts, and so I, moved to the
right.
south side of the street, and I happened to be walking right by, um, another theater where Moulin Rouge is playing,
Mhm.
and I'm having just like a normal day and like, great, my day's over. I'm getting to my car. I'm gonna go home. And like
Yeah.
right
Almost there.
next to the parking garage is where the Moulin Rouge stage door is.
Right. Oh.
And I'm like, I have to be on this side of the street. I planned ahead to be on
Mm.
this side of the street. I guess I didn't have to be. I could have like walked past it, but that's more spoons and whatever.
Right.
So I'm on the south side of the street and I get stuck in the Moulin Rouge stage door. And like in New York, the way that they do it is they'll like put these little barricades on the sidewalk so that the audience can't swarm the stage door. So there's like, a barricade between the
Right.
actors and the audience, which is safety. Yeah.
Safety.
But the thing that was new that
Not
hadn't
accessible.
been there the last time that I had to park over here was they were also doing construction. And so there was like this big like the scaffolding was also on the sidewalk. And so it meant that like there was the barrier for the audience and then like, 3 feet and then like the pillars for the scaffolding, right?
Oh
And
my
I'm
god.
stuck and nobody would move. Like and I'm with my husband and he is like
That's
yelling. Yeah,
helpful.
thank God I
But
was with him. 'Cause if
still.
I had been with him, I honestly like
Oh my
if I had been
god.
alone, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. But
Yeah.
he's like yelling, trying to get people to move and physically like touching
Right.
people, asking them to move. And literally like
Yeah.
I get stuck between there's like scaffolding on one side of me, barrier on the other side of me, and person just standing there staring at me. And I was like, "I need you to move."
Move.
And she was like, and
Excuse
like,
me.
she literally looked at me, she's like, "But I need this autograph." And I was like, "I need you to move."
I'm in Suffs. Do you want me
Right?
to
I
sign
was
it?
like, I didn't even know what to do. And then like I see that there's
I'll
like
sign it.
a cop in the street, just like, and he just like looked at me. He was like,
Watching all
"Well,
of
where
this
are you trying to
unfold.
go?" And I was like, "There." Like, who cares where I'm trying to go? I'm stuck. And so like
Yeah.
I can't get
Move
around.
people. Maybe
Nobody will
help
move.
me.
I literally tell this person standing in front of me, I was like, "I need you to take a step to your left and switch places with me. I need you to do-si-do with me. Like, that's
That's
all
it.
I need." And she's like, "But I don't want to lose my spot." And I was like,
Simple.
"I don't care about your spot. I'm not trying to take your spot even," which is like, that shouldn't matter. But like, I'm not trying to
No,
take your
I'm
spot.
literally trying to get to
No,
my
I'm trying to
car.
get out of the
Move.
way, trying to just leave. And I couldn't. And finally, like, I get through that area. And then once again, I met with more people. And then there's just a planter in front of me too, like on the sidewalk because New York.
Who does
And I
this?
just I start like hyperventilating, and I'm just like, there's so many people around me, and I'm in my wheelchair and I can't move. And finally I just started crying, and I just like hopped the curb, did a wheelie, hopped the curb into the street, because I was like, that is
Yeah.
the safer option right now, is for me in my
Oh.
wheelchair to get into the street. And like I finally get around this stage door. And this police officer has done nothing. Like, also they're all still there, they never moved the barriers, like the whole thing was just awful. And I just like finally get past it, and I just start like hyperventilating and crying. And I was like,
I'm
it's
so
such a simple
sorry.
thing to be like, cool, I'm leaving work to go home, and in the one city block between me and my car,
Yeah.
because of
I can't.
the man-made barrier plus scaffolding
And
and
humans.
humans, like all of which are movable. Like those barriers,
Yeah.
I can move them in my chair with one hand. Like they don't weigh
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
There
Right.
theoretically is security for every single stage door to be able to move them. There is this police
Right.
officer standing in the street. There is hundreds of people standing around me, and like I couldn't go anywhere. My solution was go into the street. Like, and thank God I was with another person, and my husband, like, made
Yeah.
sure that the cars saw me and I was able to,
Nobody hit
exactly,
you.
right? But it's just like, that shouldn't
Yeah.
ever be the solution.
No, and nobody thinks about that, right? Because, like you said, people are like, "Oh, it's 5
Mhm,
p.m. Time to go
mhm.
home. I'm just gonna head to my
Yeah,
car," and that's
yeah.
that's it. Like an able-bodied person could
They
have
would just move through
fully
that. Yeah, or
navigated.
they would be able to, like, walk during the it's like 1 foot between the scaffolding and the curb, right? So they could walk on the outside of
Right.
the scaffolding and kinda, like, step in and out of the
Right.
curb as needed, like, and you don't even think about that.
Right. No, I get comments all the time being like, because I film
Mhm,
those
mhm.
situations, and people have commented and being like, "Oh, so you're just going looking for inaccessibilities," and it's
No,
like,
it
no,
finds me.
I'm actually not. They
Yeah.
find me. They they find
Mhm.
me. And I'm like, no, the reason I post about those kinds of things isn't because I'm trying to complain. It's because I'm showing people exactly
Mhm.
that. You could have navigated through that no
Mhm.
problem. I and others like me, what was that? I and others like me can't do
Yeah.
that. We have to have plan
Mhm.
A, plan B, plan C, plan
Mhm.
D, and
Yeah.
so on. All the way to
Yeah.
plan Z if we
Yeah.
have to. And, like that is what I'm trying to show people so that maybe an able bodied person would be in a similar situation later and be like, oh, I remember that one video I saw from that small girl on the internet.
Mhm.
And she told me that, like, this is kind of like that situation. And they'll just move whatever needs to. Even if there's not a disabled person there, they'll have that. Like, I want to be that little voice in the back of their head that's like, oh, what if there is a
Right.
disabled
Maybe
person
we
that comes
don't
later? And
create
like, you
the
could have been the
situation,
change,
right? Because
or like, you could have been the
mhm.
solution.
Mhm. Because like, what I needed in that moment was, like, 1, I don't love how we do stage dooring in New York. Like, the sidewalks aren't big enough to
Yeah.
accommodate this. Um,
No.
but, so that's a bigger problem. But, like, what I needed in that moment
Right.
was for there to be more space between the barriers and the scaffolding. right?
Right.
Or a sign at the end of the street that says, "Just don't come this way," right? Like, literally, which that shouldn't be the option, but, like, it would have helped. If I had known that
Yeah.
the sidewalk
And
was
those
gonna be blocked, I
solutions
would have crossed the street.
and those solutions don't cost millions of
No.
dollars. Right? They cost 5 seconds of your
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
That's it. No
Mhm.
money. No money needed to be
None at
involved.
all.
A Samaritan could have seen your problems getting through that
And move the
crowd
barrier.
and helped
Yeah.
you and your husband and moved the barriers.
No.
Did they? No.
No.
No, they didn't. So it's about making non-disabled people more aware, right? And so I think that is where education
Yeah.
comes in. And I've always said, and so this is why people like my videos. This is why people hate my videos where I educate people about, like, here are the inaccessibilities that I faced
Mhm.
today. But that's also why people like my
Yeah.
videos that I post about those things. And so I've always said that, like, education is the key to removing the fear out of
Mhm.
disability. And not only that, but also combating
Yeah.
ableism, because what you faced was
Right.
ableism and nobody was doing it to
Mhm.
you, and it wasn't
No, it was
intentional
structural.
ableism, but it was still structural ableism. And so I think I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of things. There were a lot of
Yeah.
solutions in that
Well, but
moment that I'm sorry you weren't met with.
education is just the first step to
I
learning, right?
agree.
To, like, learning what you don't know. And, I
100%.
understand why people, like, come back with backlash of, like, they don't want to be taught because no one wants to feel like they're wrong, right? No one wants to feel like
Mhm.
they've hurt somebody. And so it does feel like kind of a
Right.
natural inclination to be like, "Well, I didn't do it. Why are you mad at me?" Or,
Right.
any time that you feel like you are in the wrong, you can either lean into that and be like, "Well, how can I do better?" Or you, like, get on your back foot and you're like, "How dare you tell me I'm wrong?"
Right.
Right? And both are just
Right.
kinda human instincts, but the more we're
Yep.
presented with it, the more we start to change our minds, the more we start to become aware, the more we
Mm.
are interested in engaging, and
Mm.
without those first steps, nobody would ever know they were wrong, right? Like, if we were all just, quietly just existing and not pointing
Yeah.
out ableism, everyone would go, "Great, the world is working." But the world isn't working. The
Yeah.
world is working for you,
No.
maybe, but the world is not working for me.
Yeah, for you. It's not working for us,
Mhm.
frankly. And it has
Has
never
never. Has
worked
never.
for us. And that's the thing I think people don't realize is they're like, "Oh, well, back in my
Like,
day, we didn't have as many disabled people in the
"Yes, you
world." And
did.
it's like,
You
"You did.
did."
We were just locked away.
Yes.
We were just institutionalized." So, like, we were
Mhm.
we were there. We were just hidden away from
Yeah.
society. There were ugly laws permitting
Right,
it.
or
Like,
if we were
you know.
visible, it wasn't recorded to history, right? And that's like another thing that
No.
we talk about, or that I've thought about a lot with Suffs, is like, I am a disabled person using a modern wheelchair in a story set in
Right.
1913, and
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting.
but what I take away from it is it's not that disabled people weren't at those protests. It's not that there weren't
No.
disabled suffragists. It's that there
No,
were
there
there
were.
were there were
Yeah.
so many, we just don't know their names. And
We don't know their names. We don't know their
exactly,
stories
exactly, and
because no one cared. No one cared
yeah,
to
no one
ask.
committed it down to history, and, like, that is true for
No.
every single historical movement, right? We
Yeah.
we were there. Everyone is represented in these movements, but we just don't necessarily have the proof of it. That doesn't mean you weren't there, it doesn't mean you weren't part of it.
Mhm.
And I think people with
Right.
disabilities in particular get written out. And whether it's, committed to history in, a different way of, like, they're not saying, "Oh, she had a
Mm.
disability." They say, like, "Oh, she had a weakness," right? Like, they'll say it in these weird, like, funny euphemisms where you're like, "So she was disabled?" Like, that's what we're saying?
So what you're telling me is she was
Right, but it'll
disabled.
be like, "She had an affliction." And you're like, "Was that affliction
Mm.
a limp?"
Of the body?
Right? Like
Or
like, what was this
yeah.
affliction? We're just gonna say it in this, like, very polite way.
Was she blind? Like, what
Exactly,
was
exactly. And,
the
like, they will also say things like, she'd never seen well, and you're like, "So she was blind?"
So she was
I'm like,
blind.
"Is that what you mean?" Like, but we don't
So she
know,
needed
right?
glasses?
Right.
Is
We
that what
don't
you're
know
saying?
if it was like she needed glasses, she
No.
was legally blind. Like, is
No.
this a metaphor? We don't know from our history books necessarily. But
No.
like people with disabilities have always been here, have always wanted,
We've always
yeah, we've always
existed.
wanted to.
But you've never seen us. That's
Exactly.
the
So you're like, oh,
thing.
well, you didn't exist in the 80s. You're like, what? Like, well,
Wait a
disabled
second.
people were
It wasn't that
invented
long ago.
with the passing of the ADA, obviously. Like,
Obviously. No, we just spawned. Actually, there was no yeah, we just
yeah,
appeared.
yeah. It's like, oh, we have to put ramps
And
on
then we just
buildings.
started
That's
complaining
when
about
wheelchairs
things.
were invented. You're like, what?
Right. It wasn't like the 1600s. It was
No, no.
1977 is when
Yeah,
when that happened.
first time.
Or 1990.
1990 for the
1990.
ADA.
1990 for the
Yeah.
ADA. So I usually leave this into the last question, but I'm just interested in what your response will be because every single person's is different. I've had a lot of really powerful disabled women on the podcast, which I
Yes.
love. And so there was one disabled man, I'm sorry, but the majority are disabled women. And so my main demographic on social media, because I'm a social media activist, as you know, and my main demographic on all of my platforms are young girls, mainly. Usually 13 to 18 ish. So, young teenagers. Some of them are my age, like 18 to 24, but most of them are younger. So, and I get a lot of questions. Like I'm disabled and I'm really struggling with being confident in my body. And I'm disabled and I'm really struggling with wanting to be in the arts, but I'm really confused on like how to get started, or I don't see myself represented. And so I'm really discouraged. And some of it is performance related, but a lot of it is confidence and being comfortable in your own body and loving yourself enough to put yourself out there and front and center. And so I was wondering what your advice is for those younger kids with disabilities.
Oh, it's such a big question because like and
I
we've all
know.
been there. We've all been that
Yeah.
kid who wasn't confident in ourselves.
Who wanted to be
Yeah, and
seen.
wanted to be
Yeah.
loved and wanted to be accepted and
Yeah.
appreciated. So I think that that's actually a great thing to realize is that like, when you're young and you're looking up to these people and you're like, "Oh my gosh, they have so much confidence." We once felt that way too. Like, so this is not a unique experience.
We were there. Yeah.
I think for me, a lot of my confidence, some of it was from other people. It was, having family and friends that, would boost me up. But it's also trusting them that, what they're saying is true, right? When they tell me, you are smart, you are capable, you are strong, that I believe those things. I internalize those things.
You
I
would
am
those.
those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to believe that when someone tells you that you can do something, you're like, oh, can I? Like, trust the people around you. Because people see you a hell of a lot better than you see yourself. It's really hard to see yourself accurately. One of the things that for me was like seeing my friends who I thought were just the most beautiful, strong, capable people on the planet and realizing that they had insecurities too. Like it blows your mind. You're like, how? You are incredible. You're the most incredible human I've ever seen. You should believe it.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to see yourself. It's hard to analyze yourself.
That's true.
But, for me, it was also like, even if I didn't necessarily believe it of myself, I knew that I wanted to be an example for somebody else. So sometimes it was just a fake it till you make it, where I was like, I'm going to pretend like I have this figured out when I go into this audition. I'm going to have the confidence that I need to have because like I might not have it, but if I pretend like I have it, then maybe they'll believe it. And you'd be surprised how often that works.
It works a lot,
like
actually.
Truly, fake it till you make it. And the weird thing about it is that you start to believe it yourself. right?
Mhm.
You know, it's the what's that saying of like dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Like it
Yeah.
actually does work though. Like if I
It
put on the
does.
character for myself of like I believe in myself, I am strong, I am confident, I start to believe it over time.
Yeah.
And so I find that just like incredibly helpful. And then a friend of mine recently, for my birthday, she introduced me to this tradition that she has where everybody stands in a circle and they tell you the birthday person something specific that they love about you.
Mm.
And
I love
isn't it, and it was
that.
so
That would just
powerful.
make
Oh
me
my god, I was
sob.
crying the entire time. I was a
That would make me
mess.
cry.
But
Yeah.
we don't tell each other those things often enough.
Mm.
So like that's something that I've also recently started doing is like when you notice something specific about somebody that you admire, tell them.
Say it.
Tell them.
Tell
And also
them.
tell yourself. And I think
Mm.
that that's harder for us to do, but like, you know, let's
It's
say that you
true.
just finished a big project for school or for work or whatever and you did well, congratulate yourself. Tell yourself
Take yourself out on a
exactly and
date.
tell yourself like you absolutely crushed that. Right? Like
Yeah.
and something
Good job.
specific. Right? It's not just like you
Yeah.
did a good job. It's like, you know, something specific about that task that you did well and that you felt
Yeah.
confident in. Um,
Don't just move on to the next
exactly.
thing.
I do this for every
Take some time.
audition that I've ever done. When I leave the audition, I tell myself something I did well and something I can improve upon. Because like
Mm.
I always want to congratulate myself. I don't want to be too hard on myself. Right? We shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. But also, I want to learn and
Agreed.
grow. So if you leave the audition,
Yeah.
say like, I'm going to start with the positive. I did this well. That was hard.
Mhm.
I put myself out there. I did this well, right? Like I I I really crushed my diction. My diction was great during that audition.
My pronunciation was
Absolutely, right? It can
amazing.
be small like that. And then something I can improve upon, like, you know, I feel like I could maybe have warmed up more before that audition.
Mm.
Right? I didn't quite hit
Mm.
that high note exactly like I wanted to. I could have warmed up more.
Even if it's just getting into the building, I feel like that's a win.
Absolutely. I got out of bed
Even
and
if you're
got to
like,
that audition.
and like I figured out the inaccessibilities once I was
Yes.
there. Like
Yes.
the elevator wasn't working and I
Mhm,
figured it
mhm.
out. And I
And
got in
now,
the room on
next time,
time.
I know how to get into that building. Like,
Yeah.
every single challenge can be something that you learn from, that you grow from, and, like, we need to celebrate those victories, and
100%.
also, like, it's not a matter of, like, being cocky and being like, "I did a great job." It's a matter of, like, celebrating the wins
No.
and also looking forward to, like, "And
Yes.
how can I grow from this? How can I become, you know, even better at this?" Like, it's a little bit of both
Yeah.
every single time.
My favorite thing after auditions is getting myself a little treat too.
Ooh.
That's my favorite thing. I once had an instructor. His name is Tom O'Leary. I love this man dearly. And he said one thing that we should be doing after auditions is to auditions, callbacks, if you got the job, whatever. Celebrate yourself by, yes, like affirming that, like, yes, I did a good job. I did this. This is something I can work on. But also doing something that will make your heart
Mhm.
happy. Whether that's, stopping on the way home at your favorite coffee
Mhm.
shop and getting yourself that latte
Mhm.
or, that croissant that you really love, or whether that's going home and making it or, baking that thing that you really
Mhm.
love or reading that book or crocheting.
Mhm.
I
Me
crochet
too.
a lot. Um,
Yeah.
you do? Oh my gosh, we have to
Yes.
talk about that later. Uh, I knew we were going to
Mhm,
be great
mhm.
friends. Or like crocheting or going to the yarn store
Yes.
and buying yourself more yarn. That's my favorite thing to do.
Mhm.
Small things that really affirm like I did the best I could possibly do today.
Mhm.
And like that was my best and I showed up and I did the thing and I did it,
Yeah.
and like now I get a little treat.
Mhm. 'Cause auditioning is
That's my
is
favorite thing.
hard, right? And, like,
It's hard.
any industry, like, interviewing is hard. And
Yes.
for acting, we have to do it constantly. It's, the grind.
At least once a
Yeah.
week. It's a
Yeah.
whole
It's
thing.
constant, and it's exhausting, and it's painful, and it's, you know it's all of the
But we
emotions.
love it, we keep doing it, and we
Exactly.
put ourselves through it all the
Exactly.
time.
It's also a different skill set from
We keep
actually
going back.
performing, and so, like, every
Yes.
time that you can reward yourself for that, like, it makes it a little less painful, right? You're like, "Oh, I have an
Yeah.
audition."
And it also reminds you that, like, you love
Yeah.
doing it, because that's why you're
Yeah.
doing it,
Why would
right?
you do it
Like,
if you didn't
I
love
have
it?
to remind myself of that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, "I love this. This is why I'm
Mhm.
doing it." I don't know what's happening with my audio. There we go. I love it. And, like, that's why you should be doing something, right?
Yeah.
And so reminding yourself that that's why
Mhm.
you just did that hard
Yeah, and
thing.
it's not just about the hustle. It's not just about, like, well, I'm auditioning to get that job that I want.
Right.
It's I'm auditioning because that's part of this profession, and once I'm done
Right.
with it, I get to go take a bubble bath, and isn't that
Yeah.
nice? Like, I have
Yeah.
something to look forward to,
Yeah.
because I put myself out there, I get to
Right.
reward myself for that.
Yeah. As you should.
Mhm.
My mic has stopped working,
Lovely.
so we're gonna stop.
Great.
Isn't that great? Isn't that just the
Love
best?
when that happens.
I really love when that happens, but whatever. We're here now. Yeah, and so I think that rewarding yourself is really important and really
Mhm.
affirming, because I feel like as humans, we're very physical beings,
Mhm.
and so like, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. When, like, you did a good job, but, like, you don't reward
Yeah.
yourself for the good job that you
Mhm.
did. Even if it's like, okay, now I'm gonna go decompress with a hot shower.
Mhm.
That's what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do. Like, no matter what it is, like, just treat yourself, reward
Mhm.
yourself, tell yourself you did a good
Mhm.
job. Pick one thing that you can improve on later,
Yeah, but not in the moment, and also, like, even if you leave an
but
audition
not in
and
the
you're,
moment.
like, crushed, right? You're like, "Oh, that did not go well."
Yeah.
Like, honestly, still focus on the positive, and I keep a running list of every audition that I do. Um,
So do
yeah,
I.
just for, like, I like data. Data helps me. So, like, being able to
I have a whole
see me too,
spreadsheet.
me too. Like, being able to look at my Excel spreadsheet and be like, it's color coded for, like,
Yep.
what did I book? What did I get a call back for?
Uh-huh.
But I also have information of,
Uh-huh.
like, what materials did I prep? What did I wear?
Right.
And I just give myself, like, basic notes on, like, how I felt like it went. And
Yeah.
what was really strange for me was realizing that the auditions that I was like, "I crushed that." I never book those auditions.
You never heard back from that.
Never.
It's always the one where you're like, that was literally the
That was
worst audition
terrible.
I've ever had.
Yes. Like, the ones where I leave and I'm like, "I don't know. I don't think that was good."
You were like, I cracked on that note and I started in this wrong key and I told the pianist
Right,
the wrong
right, or you're
thing.
like, "The vibes were super off." I went in and they just, like, didn't
I
even
think
look
they
at me.
hated
Yeah,
me.
like, those are always the ones that you're like, "Oh, I booked that? I booked that? Really?" And the auditions where you're like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing, best audition ever," you never hear back from. I I've gotten very good at just, like, kind of forgetting what I auditioned for
Yeah,
because, like, I find
I
it
know. And then
healthier.
they're like, call back. And I'm like, did I actually
Right,
do that?
right, and
No,
you're like
let
it's like a
me.
nice little surprise when you get that callback, but, like, I never with very few exceptions, of course, there's those things that you get an audition for that you get, like, super excited about, but, like, for the most part, as soon as I audition, I just try to memory hole it because it's
So do
safer
I.
for me to be like, "It's a pleasant
Yep.
surprise when I hear back."
Yeah, I think what people don't realize is, like, the saying in the industry of, like, you get 1,000 no's before you get one yes is very
So
true.
accurate.
That is very true. But most of your no's are not actual verbal
Yeah,
no's. You just
yeah.
don't hear. I do a lot of voiceover work and a lot of voiceover auditions. And the thing about voiceover is it literally takes like 2 years
Mhm,
because they have to animate the whole
mhm.
thing. And so I auditioned for this one project back in 2021. It was the first ever project that I auditioned for with my
Okay.
agent. And I auditioned for it and I never heard back. And then last year, 2 weeks after I graduated, they were like, "Hey, we actually really liked you. Could you come in and do this part real quick?"
You're
And
like,
I
"That
was
was
like,
years ago."
"Yeah, I guess." I was like, "Wait, what project?" And then my agent was like, "Yeah, hang on." And like she didn't even like she had to like go back on her
Right.
records. and find it because she was like, "What?" And so we eventually figured it out. It was the very, very first project. It was like October of 2021, and they
Jeez.
reached out in June of 2023. It was so strange.
Yep.
And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I can do
Yep.
that." Like, I didn't even remember.
It's such a hard balance to be
So
like,
it happened.
you don't wanna, you don't wanna kill the hope, but also, it's in your best interest to kinda kill the hope. Because sometimes it is 3
But like,
years
maybe
later.
I'm just gonna shove it into the back of my brain
Yeah.
and just never remember.
Yeah, I always go with the,
Yeah,
I just wanna be pleasantly surprised. So I always move on and just
yeah.
be like, "Oh, well." And then if they call me again 3 years later, "Oh, that's nice."
Oh,
I'd
cool.
rather get that little, you know, adrenaline bump, get a little happy
Yeah.
reminder than be, pining over it for those 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. I just forget
Yeah,
about it. I'm really good at being like, "What job?
agreed,
Which
agreed.
one?" And then I have to go back in my spreadsheet and be like, "Hang
Mhm,
on. Is this the one you're
mhm.
talking about?"
Which is why you keep the spreadsheet.
Um,
Also, all the change the titles change, you're like, "But this was called, Spirited when I first auditioned, and now it's called Ghostly." And you're like, "Oh, it's the same thing."
oh, it's the same one. It's the
Yeah,
same
it's been
one.
3 years, has a new title, has an
Yeah, and then
entirely
I
new
have
team. Same thing.
it's been
Yep,
rewritten actually. It's just
yep.
um yeah, it's really interesting how fast pace our industry
Yeah.
is. Everything moves really fast sometimes, then other times really
Mhm,
slowly.
mhm.
Real slow.
Yeah,
And I'm like, hello.
yeah.
Like,
And
what about that one
and,
thing?
I tend to do more theater, um, and
Yeah,
theater is interesting because it is so, so, so thought out in advance. Like,
yeah,
there's auditions right now for things happening,
yeah,
next fall, right?
right.
A lot of the time, generally, you're auditioning for something 6 months out. So you're,
At least.
trying to plan your life. I in Denver, whenever theaters would announce their season, once again, I like spreadsheets. I would put every single show into my
Oh
spreadsheet
my
for all of
god.
the theaters so I could figure out the matrix of, okay, so if
Mm,
I book this show for fall and it closes,
yeah.
November 2nd, okay, great. This show at this other theater company starts rehearsing November 3rd, right? You start doing this
Yeah.
whole dream scenario based off what I book, what's still available to
Yeah.
me. And it's
Right.
so interesting to be so far out, 6 months out, 10 months out.
Yeah.
Um and it's also the interesting thing about Broadway, we have an open-ended run. So Suffs
Could close tomorrow, could close for
exactly, could
3 in the future.
exactly, and, the longest running show on Broadway right now has been open for over 20 years, right?
Yeah.
There are Phantom is the longest running show of all time on Broadway, and it ran for 35 years, right?
Yeah.
Now, none of those actors were still with it 35 years later, but
No.
it is an interesting thing that, they were all able to leave whenever it made sense for them, right? Contracts
Right.
ending, new offers, whatever. Um,
Right.
but if you think about, oh, a show could run for 35 years, and in theory, you could be with it for any number of those years. It's such a
Yeah.
funny thing to think about, I'm looking ahead now to the future and being
Wild.
like, "But I don't know."
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
know it's really hard to plan your life. My boyfriend and I are always like, well, if I get that one role in the middle of July
Uh-huh.
in New Mexico,
Uh-huh.
then maybe you can.
Right?
And then we're like, right, but then when would my breaks be? Okay, well,
Exactly.
so it's like always constantly trying to plan your life around these. And then guess what? I didn't get
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And
So we don't even actually have to worry about
but you're
it.
like, "But if I get it, we could, take a
But
vacation,"
if.
right?
I know people are always like, "Why are you so stressed about the future?" And I'm like, "Because I
'Cause
have
I'm
to be.
always in future
Because that's
planning.
quite literally that's the industry that I'm
Yep.
in. I can't not
Yep.
be because this thing films in Toronto,
Right.
Canada,
Right, and, I have to make sure my
in
passport
June.
is good in case I get this because
Yeah,
I won't find out that I got it until 2 weeks before, and
yeah,
that's not enough time.
yeah. And then I gotta
Right, so,
go.
yes, I'm looking at the fact that my passport expires in 2028 to figure out, okay, so when
Yeah,
I'm backdating it, when do I need to go get it renewed
right.
so that in case I audition for something that happens to film in Canada,
Oh
This
my
is the life of
god.
an actor that nobody sees.
This is wild. I'm so glad that you
Yeah.
understand.
We are planning 6
Because
months
my
out
boyfriend,
pretty
who's not in
immediate.
the industry, all my family, none of them are in the industry. So they're like, why are you, why are you doing
Yeah. I
this?
also like,
And I'm like, they
if
have
I don't have
to.
my calendar, I'm so screwed because I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know what tomorrow holds.
I don't know what
I
day it
planned it
is.
3 months ago.
Don't know what day it is. That's why I was shocked that I messaged you like 2 weeks
Uh-huh.
ago. And I was like, can you be on my podcast in 2 weeks? And you were like,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, that was
Yeah.
shocking. That was
It was like perfect timing. It was like the universe aligned for that moment like, "Hey, we're
well,
both
and
free on
then like
Tuesday."
yeah, but then we had to cancel because originally last week we were
Mhm.
supposed to do it, but we both got an
Yeah.
audition on the
Yep.
same day
Yep. Last minute.
for two completely different things, I
Yeah.
guarantee you. But
Well,
the
because we also live on opposite
completely
coasts.
different thing. Yeah, and we had to get stuff done, and so we couldn't do it last
Mhm.
week. And so then fates aligned this week
Yeah.
again. That was
Yeah.
magical.
Thanks, universe. Thanks for
Wild.
looking out.
Yeah, thanks. Jenna, thank you so much for being on my
Thank
show. I
you.
really
This has been
appreciate it.
so much fun. I really appreciate you having
I
me.
know. Thank you. Okay, where can people find you?
You can find me at Bainbridge Jenna on Instagram. Um, I try to be active on social media, but I'm not very good at it. Um,
That's fair.
yeah, and come see Suffs. We are playing at the Music Box Theater in New York. Um, and it's really good. It's funny. It's engaging. It'll also get you pumped for the election. So, and it is streaming on all major streaming services right now. It is also for your consideration if you are a Grammy voter. Listen to our album. Yeah, Suffs the
Oh,
musical.
wow. Fancy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of The View from 4 Feet and 3 Inches. I'm your host, Cassidy Huff. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, give me a 5-star rating depending on where you're watching or listening from. Make sure to follow me at Cass Huff on all other social media because I do post every single day on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook Reels, and YouTube Shorts. I have a YouTube vlog that comes out every Wednesday and a podcast episode that comes out every Sunday. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.